SuperCarlinBrothers is sponsored by BetterHelp. Ever find yourself unloading the weight of the world on the person at the checkout counter? It's human. We're all looking for someone to listen, but not everyone is equipped to help. With over a decade of experience, BetterHelp matches you with the right therapist. See why they have a 4.9 rating out of 1.7 million client session reviews. Visit betterhelp.com/super for 10% off your first month.
Okay, but how are the Malfoys so rich? Hey, brother! Let's talk about the Malfoys, shall we? The name in rich pureblood elitism. Their name literally means bad faith, and they act like it.
Think my name was funny, do you?
It is such a shame that Draco is the first kid that Harry ever meets inside of the wizarding world. You were raised by these terrible muggles, you get rescued on the hut on the rock in the sea by a half-giant who tells you you're a wizard?
I'm a what?
A wizard! Only to find out that it's more of the same, but now with magic. My father is next door buying my books, and my mother's on the street looking at wands, said the boy. He had a bored, drawling voice. Then I'm going to drag them off to look at racing brooms. I don't see why first years can't have their own. I think I'll bully father into getting me one and I'll smuggle it in somehow. But one detail that seems to go unexplained throughout the saga is just where all of this wealth actually comes from.
What's the use in being a disgrace to the name of wizard if they don't even pay you well for it?
The thing is that Arthur is actually employed. Near as I can tell, Lucius is just, present. Oh wait, no, that's what he gifts.
A gift from Draco's father.
But seriously, it's a little rich to be insulting someone else's job when you're actively, intentionally unemployed, you know? Oh wait, no, I got that wrong. It's not a little rich, it's big rich, because the Malfoys don't have some money, they are loaded. Good Lord, Arthur, he said softly. What'd you have to sell to get seats in the top box? Surely your house wouldn't have fetched this much. Okay, let's think about the implication of that sentiment. It's that Arthur's most valuable asset, his home, if sold, wasn't enough to buy tickets to a sporting event. Which pretty heavily implies that Lucius can spend more on a single night out than most wizards could on their homes. So we know that the Malfoys come from a long line of pure-blooded wizards, and in most cases, save for the Weasleys, this seems to bode well for a family's wealth.
I think it's brilliant.
But where did the Malfoys' gold come from in the first place? Well, today, we get to the bottom.
But y'all want to take a brief pause to give a huge thank you to today's sponsor, Shopify. Okay, here's a fun one for you all. Back in the year of 2012, a young Ben Carlin found himself at an aquarium conference alongside a young startup hotshot from San Fran who had just famously created the world's first tabletop live jellyfish aquarium. He also went on to invent the Chargerito. Who knew? Needless to say, I was inspired and set off on a variety of sketches for a phone case that had this retractable cable that you could easily wrap around anything, like trees, a handy way to take new selfies. Now the idea went absolutely nowhere, in part because I had no idea how to make it. But even if I did, I even had less of an idea on how to sell it. But that's where Shopify comes in. Shopify is the way to take your brilliant new phone case, or, your actual own good, better idea, from the organic synapses of your brain and into the digital synapses of the internet. How does the internet work? Doesn't matter, because even though I don't know, Shopify does. They have made easy to use, ready-made templates that make setting up a website and making your first sale a breeze. So if you're ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify. Turn your big business idea into with Shopify on your side. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/SCB. Again, that's shopify.com/SCP. One last time for safety, shopify.com/SCB. Link in the description down below. And now back to the video. Ooh, was that a breath?
So, as you'd probably expect, Lucius Malfoy has little to nothing to do with the family's wealth. He is the product of generations of insane generational wealth and believes, as sure as he does, that purebloods are a superior race, that he is entitled to his wealth by divine right. Maybe that's why he dyes his hair so blonde, so he's more reflective, And this wealth traces back far, really far, over 10 centuries, when, according to the Pottermore archives, the first of the Malfoy family, Armand Malfoy, aided William the Conqueror in his claim to the English throne in 1066. And the end result for this aid was a substantial gift of lands to Armand Malfoy in Wiltshire. Wiltshire? Way down in Wiltshire, past the tire factory. The people of Britain hate me right now. And as you can imagine, this land was taken from its former owners. But more importantly, this very land is the location of Malfoy Manor in the modern day, which makes it a super old building, and it's crazy to me that every generation of Malfoy has lived there. Although on that note, do you think like every cousin and uncle squeezed in there, or is it like the Malfoy royal line reserved for the next heir?
It's killed me.
And actually, the next mystery you may be wondering about on this very note is that if the Malfoys are pure blood maniacs like others we see in the series, why aren't they more like the Gaunts, for example? Because both families go back 1,000 years and share the same obsession with blood purity, but the Malfoys are the picture-perfect example of Voldemort's promised vision, while the Gaunts, despite owning priceless artifacts, live in squalor and, well... Marvolo, his son Morphin, and his daughter Merope were the last of the Gaunts, a very ancient wizarding family noted for a vein of instability and violence that flourished through the generations due to their habit of marrying their own cousins. Lack of sense, coupled with a great liking for grandeur, meant that the family gold was squandered several generations before Marvolo was born. This is a detail that seems to, on some level, hold true across other pure-blood families as well, though maybe not in such a radical fashion. The Weasleys, for example, may be blood traders by reputation, meaning they've never sought much store by the purity of one's blood, but nonetheless, the Weasley kids are all still purebloods. Arthur obviously comes from the line of Weasley, and Molly from the line of Pruitt. Both names appear on the Sacred 28. Then Sirius further explains how this trend seems to continue amongst the Black family tree as well. The pureblood families are all interrelated, said Sirius. If you're only going to let your sons and daughters marry purebloods, your choice is very limited. There are hardly any of us left. Molly and I are cousins by marriage, and Arthur is something like a second cousin once removed. So what about the Malfoys? What does this have to do with their wealth, and how did they seem to avoid some of the pitfalls of the other families? Well, hilariously, it almost all comes down to the adjective that Voldemort himself uses when he is first resurrected and facing his Death Eaters for the first time. Lucius, my slippery friend, he whispered, halting before him. Slippery is the exact word we get on Pottermore to further explain the true legacy of the Malfoy family. The Malfoys have always had the reputation, hinted at by their not altogether complimentary surname, of being a slippery bunch, to be found courting power and riches wherever they might be found. And we're going to see this behavior show up nearly every time the Malfoys find themselves at a major crossroads. Like, if we examine their family tree, what you might find is not that the Malfoys have strictly abided by the only marry pure sentiment that some of the more diehard families have bought into. Instead, it's more as Phineas Nigella says, "It looks to me as though you would have been better off in my own house. We Slytherins are brave, yes, but not stupid. For instance, given the choice, we will always choose to save our own necks." Sorry, I forgot these were Wiltshirians. Now, it looks to me though you would have been better off in my own house. We Slytherins are brave, yes, but not stupid. For instance, given the choice, we will always choose to save our own necks. Classic Wiltshire. And save their own necks and riches, the Malfoys will always opt for. They will always choose the side that puts them in the most power, even if that side or opinion changes a lot over the years. In some ways, they're like Peter Pettigrew, loyal only to whoever looks like the biggest bully in the yard. The Malfoys will always ingratiate themselves with those who will bring them more wealth, power, and status. In fact, it seems similar to how Armand Malfoy first kicked off their wealth. They may have even used magic to parlay favor with the Muggle upper crust for many centuries.
Bradley Uppercrust the Third.
Did we just pull an extremely goofy movie reference inside of a Harry Potter video? Because good for us.
Gosh.
Bradley Uppercrust the Third, super Malfoy coded. Back to the actual Malfoys though. This is also from Pottermore. Over hundreds of years, they have managed to add to their lands in Wiltshire by annexing those of neighboring Muggles, and the favor they curried with the royalty added Muggle treasures and works of art to an ever-expanding collection. There are non-moving pictures and portraits in the Malfoy household. Think about that for a second. Only to this corner of the internet does that seem shocking. You know? It's like, imagine this family, they have oil paintings that don't move. Weird! But we get it, you and I. We're on the same page, I think. Hopefully.
We're the same, you and me.
We're the same, you and me.
We're the same, you and me.
The point is, they were interacting with Muggles regularly, and it's not actually until the Statute of Secrecy in 1692 that reigns so prominently in the life of all wizard kind that the Malfoys made the abrupt shift to fraternizing with only fellow wizards. But what's even crazier is that the Malfoys actually opposed the Statute of Secrecy when it was first introduced. Again, going back to Pottermore, it says, due in part to the fact that they would have had to withdraw from this enjoyable sphere of social life. The Malfoys opposed breaking away from their intermingled life with muggles. Like, that's straight bonkers. But then get this. They performed an abrupt volte-face and became as vocally supportive of the statute as any of those who had championed it from the beginning, hastening to deny that they had ever been on speaking or marrying terms with muggles. They were all about schmoozing muggles until suddenly they weren't, at which point they never had been.
You filthy little mudblood.
And I mean ever. It was a hoax. But it almost doesn't matter at this point, because they had spent 6 centuries building their wealth and possessed so much of it that they were now functionally unstoppable in terms of what kind of policy they could dictate by funding and backing various candidates for elected official positions. Which doesn't feel very dissimilar from what we witnessed with Voldemort as he rises to power in the Second Wizarding War. Why didn't Voldemort declare himself Minister of Magic? Asked Ron. Lupin laughed. He doesn't need to, Ron. Effectively, he is the minister. But why should he sit behind a desk at the ministry? His puppet thickness is taking care of everyday business, leaving Voldemort free to extend his power beyond the ministry. And when it comes to Voldemort is where you ultimately see the truest colors of the Malfoy when it comes right down to it. Because unlike Bellatrix Lestrange, Barty Crouch Jr., and really many of the Death Eaters, the Malfoy's allegiance is to themselves. Lucius tells Voldemort in the graveyard, "My lord, I was constantly on the alert. Had there been any sound from you, any whisper of your whereabouts, I would have been at your side immediately. Nothing could have prevented me." But this is just an outright lie. Rumors had circled for years about Voldemort's whereabouts in Albania. It's how Quirrell and Peter both found him. Plus, Malfoy fled from the Darkmark at the Quidditch World Cup. With Voldemort gone, Lucius no longer cares about him. He just cuddles up to the next most powerful person who will have him, including possibly Harry Potter himself, who the Malfoys and Death Eaters at large believed could be the next Lord Voldemort.
And I'm Malfoy. Draco Malfoy.
Or, in the meantime, fudge.
Fudge.
And now that's fudge as in Cornelius, not fudge like, we'll just fudge it. Although, honestly, not a bad fit either way. Point is, Voldemort has no reason at all to forgive Lucius for these lies, but he's willing to let it slide because what he really needs is Lucius's resources. And Lucius is more than willing to oblige, 1, out of fear, but 2, because all he ever really wants is a seat at the table, no matter how much a seat at that table gets his own wand personally mocked. The crazy thing is that while the Malfoy family does have that slippery history of perhaps bending the rules, it doesn't seem like they fully delved into the dark arts mode until Lucius took the helm and began following a young Voldemort. So when you really step back, the Malfoy's wealth isn't about gold in a vault or priceless treasures in a manor. It's about centuries of strategy, a strategy of adaptation. The Malfoys charmed kings before the Statute of Secrecy, then cozied up to ministers after it. They opposed the statute until it became convenient, then claimed that they had always supported it. They've always been less about loyalty to any specific ideology and more about loyalty to their own survival and comfort. And that's why it's hard to even know if we should call the Malfoys innately evil. Their surname might literally translate to bad faith, but what defines them isn't explicitly cruelty for cruelty's sake, it's opportunism. Lucius might have leaned too far into the dark arts under Tom Riddle's influence, but even then, when the chips were down, we saw Narcissa literally lie to Voldemort's face to protect Draco. So how did the Malfoys get so rich? By being slippery, by playing both sides, by never letting pride, ideology, or even morality get in the way of keeping their place at the top of the wizarding world. And in the end, that's what separates them from the Gaunts, from the Weasleys, and even from Voldemort's most fanatical followers. The Malfoys aren't about blood purity or magical supremacy. They're about survival and status. That's why, love them or hate them, probably hate them, they're always going to be richer than both of us. Y'all, thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. Be sure to like it and subscribe to the video if you haven't already. If you'd like to find out how Harry ultimately got so rich, you can check out this video right over here. But otherwise, until next time, bye! Don't forget to eat cheese.